After Emmanuel Macron's stunning victory in the French presidential election, we turn to the other election in Britain. Here with me is Janan Ganesh, chief political commentator. We're well underway now. We've had a few days in this election with Theresa May still banging the drum, strong and stable leadership. What do you think she makes of Macron's victory, and how much is Brexit playing in the current campaign?
Well, she's already used Macron's victory almost to justify her own impending election victory on June the 8th. She says that because the French president has this spectacular mandate, which he himself says will strengthen his hand in the Brexit negotiations to get a good deal for the EU and for the French side, Theresa May herself needs a mandate, and that's a good reason to have gone to the country and to win quite big on June the 8th. So she's been quite good at, I won't say exploiting, but leveraging the events in France over the weekend for her own political purposes. But Macron, during his campaign, was very explicit about his position on Europe. And the European flag was prominent.
The European anthem,
absolutely,
on election night. I mean, what a scene! You wouldn't have the European anthem playing in Theresa May's campaign rallies.
I mean, not so long ago, you wouldn't have it in a French presidential election because they always thought of themselves as a bit more national in their approach to the EU than the Germans were. But you absolutely wouldn't see that kind of Europeanism on Theresa May's side. But Macron was also quite specific about what he wanted for Europe and the French role in Europe, whereas Theresa May has been fairly ambiguous so far about how her position
except on immigration, where she's back to this promise of keeping immigration levels down to the tens of thousands. Is that realistic? And why is she playing that card?
Well, I think there's an obvious political incentive, which is that she cannot resile from that commitment, which was inherited from David Cameron, without signalling to voters that actually she's going to turn soft on migration, which was the #1 reason people voted for Brexit last summer. I actually think the more worrying thing is not that she might not achieve the target, but that she might achieve the target. In other words, if you're a British employer, or you look at the British economy overall, migration falling below 100,000 year after year might do some supply side damage actually in the long term. And so you almost want her to fail at this target that she herself has chosen. Ideally, she wouldn't have a numerical target, but she's chosen to stick with it. And I think the real danger to the country is that she meets it.
And how does that square with global Britain, which suggests an openness, internationalism, and free movement of goods, open trade, etc.?
It squares very uneasily, I think. And she's chosen, like her predecessor David Cameron, to push this idea of a global, open economy, signalling to the world that, look, we may have voted for Brexit in this country, but that doesn't mean we're becoming an autarkist, insular country. It's very hard to make that message persuasive if you at the same time limit migration in very severe terms. And we saw this dilemma pinch diplomatically when Theresa May visited India towards the end of last year, promoted the idea of more Anglo-Indian trade, and the Indians said in response, fine, but you're making it incredibly hard for our students, incredibly hard for our skilled workers to work in the British labour market. That doesn't seem fair. And so I think she will need to at least soften her line on immigration if she's going to sustain this idea of a much more open
Right,
Britain.
and then the other big idea this week is that Theresa May has come out in favour of price caps on for energy in the energy market. That sounds like an idea that Ed Miliband, former Labour Party leader, put forward. What's going on there?
Her instincts are a lot less pro-market than your typical Conservative leader of recent decades. She's often compared to Margaret Thatcher, but Margaret Thatcher was a big economic liberal, reformed the economy. I think her instincts, Theresa May's instincts, are a tiny bit more corporatist. The difference with Ed Miliband is that he couldn't get away with it politically, because a Labour leader saying, I'm going to interfere in the market, sounds like the beginning of a whole series of market interventions, which spooked voters. If you're a Tory and you say it, I think you have that much more license. In the way that only Nixon could go to China, only a Tory, I think, can interfere in private markets. So I disagree with the idea, but the political impact will be completely different and much better than it was for Ed Miliband 2 or 3 years ago.
So we're looking still at a very big majority for Theresa May in the June poll, according to the surveys.
Yeah, I think the survey evidence suggests a big Conservative majority, and the recent local election results in the UK, where the Conservatives did incredibly well for a party that's been in government for 7 years, also point to that kind of very comfortable victory. People speculate about the exact margin, but I think it'll be big enough that she doesn't have to worry about getting basic bits of legislation through Parliament.
Thank you, Janan. And just that last European angle, the important win for Arsenal against Manchester United, still looking for top four?
There's nothing more terrifying and painful than hope.
Thank you, Janan.